Hello everyone, I am Chaos in the Sky, as always, and welcome to another Top 10 ranking video that we're going to be doing here on the channel. For today's ranking, we're going to be looking at my top 10 favorite non-team member personas from the Persona franchise. After having covered Digimon with the first top 10 video, it only seemed right to move on to Persona next, and I wanted to do something that covered Persona at large instead of one of the specific games. Which is why for this list, we're going to be looking at my favorite personas that have nothing to do with the team members. So let's look at exactly what that means before we get started. First of all, as mentioned in the title, this list won't be considering any team member personas from any of the games. So that means no Akechi's Loki or Mitsuru's Artemisia, for example. Also, we're only looking at Persona game entries, which means we're not going to be ranking any of the demons from the SMT games, for instance, like Udun from SMT5. And also, we're not going to be using any of the protagonist personas, and by that I specifically mean the main personas that they use from the start of the game or get later in the game, like Arsene for Joker or Messiah for the Persona 3 protagonist. None of those. We're not looking at any personas like that. Now, the actual criteria for what personas make this list, now that we've defined what personas are eligible, is very similar to the Digimon Top 10 list. Mostly, it's going to come down to, first of all, the overall design of the persona, which is pretty much the most important thing for me going into this list. And on top of that, we're also going to be looking at if I have any personal connection or history with the persona from my previous playthroughs in the games, whether it was one of my off-stream playthroughs or one of my on-stream playthroughs, mostly my on-stream playthroughs, though. Also, because it's based on stuff for my stream playthroughs, there might be a little bit of consideration for the movesets of the personas to an extent, but that's a much less important factor overall. The main thing is going to be the looks of the persona, and if I have any specific attachment to it from my playthroughs. So, with all of that said, let's get right into the list, starting with number 10. First up at 10th place on the list is going to be Orthrus. Look at this guy. Just look at him. He's such a good little two-headed murder doggo. Like, he's just adorable. He's got two heads. I love his color design. He's also, like, the first animal encounter in Persona 5, if I'm remembering this right. In Persona 5, I think it's Kanashiro's palace, they introduce, like, hey, not all of the shadows that walk around before you encounter them are like these humanoid shapes. Some of them are like dogs, like little security, like SWAT dogs. And when you fight it, it's always a more, or at least I believe it's always a more animalistic persona. And Orthrus was the first one in Persona 5, and thus my first experience with that. And it was really cool. I was like, yo, look at this thing. It's got two heads. It's a dog. It shoots fire. What more could you ask for? Just overall really cool design. Really just that memory sticks out to me from Persona 5 and Kanashiro's palace. And in a franchise where for some ridiculous reason they took Cerberus and made it a one-headed lion instead of a three-headed dog, because I love Cerberus. Cerberus is such a cool mythological creature, and they ruined him. Thankfully, he's good in Persona 3 as Koromaru's persona, but that's a party member persona, so that it doesn't really count. In all the other games, he's a one-headed lion for some reason, and I hate that. But Orthrus is a good second place for that multi-headed doggo that breathes fire. So, because of that, Orthrus, easy number 10. Moving on from Orthrus, we have number 9, whose name I probably mispronounced because I have never heard it pronounced properly as far as I'm aware, which is Hecatoncheir. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry. What more could you ask of me? But Hecatoncheir is just a giant, absolute freak. Just look at this monstrosity. All of his eyes, his mini hands. He's supposed to have like 100 or 1,000 of them. I think it's 1,000. He's supposed to have like 1,000 of them. He's got like, I don't know, like maybe 8, give or take, in the Persona franchise. But I like to imagine that if one of his arms like got ripped off or cut off, then like 2 more would replace it, like some kind of a weird Hydra, and that's how he eventually gets to 1,000 or 100. I should have fact-checked if it was 1,000 or 100 before recording this video, but I think it's 1,000. 1,000 sounds more fun, so we'll go with that. Hecatoncheir is just a monstrosity. He's just a freak, but he's kind of grown on me. He's in like every Persona game. I think he usually shows up as like a persona you can get in like the level 40-ish range when you're like kind of coming around that halfway point in the game in most Persona games, give or take. usually a really good physical attacker, and he's hard to forget. He just really stands out. He was one of the first personas when I sat down to make a short list for who would get on this top 10. One of the first ones I thought of was like, oh, Hecatoncheir. He just comes to my mind immediately when I think of personas usually. Also, in Persona 5 Strikers, when you fight him in that warrior-style gameplay, he's just like on his knees, running around on his knees, and that has always stuck out in my mind because it's just hilarious to see this giant multi-handed monstrosity on his knees, like, oh, I'm gonna get you. Oh, I'm gonna get you. Look at this. Gigantamakia. Oh, I'm gonna get you. I find it really funny. So I also just straight up, honestly, I have a fun time trying to say his name, even if I am butchering it. I will probably mispronounce like at least 3 other personas on this list. But, you know, when I was coming up with this list, I was like, I gotta put Hecatoncheir on here somewhere, and he just barely got over the 2-headed murder doggo, so good for him. But that puts Hecatoncheir at number 9 on my top 10 persona list. Next up for 8th place on the list, we have Fafnir. Look at it. I feel like so many of the things on this list is going to be me saying, look at it. Just look at this giant metal dragon monstrosity. He just stands out so much to me personally in a lineup of personas. He's so very unique. I know that Fafnir is some kind of like mythological dragon that, according to me having played God of War recently, has something to do with dwarves as well. He's like a dwarf turned into a dragon or something. I don't know the full lore on it, but he's a dragon, and in Persona they made him this like mechanical construct one with really interesting looking like wings, quotation marks. And he has that weird little like heart symbol on his chest that every time I look at it, it reminds me of Undertale. Just, he really stands out, and I really remember him. He's the main strong enemy in Maruki's palace in Persona 5 Royal, which was the first time I encountered Fafnir. I don't know if Fafnir actually shows up in 4 and 3. I'm sure he's in 3 Reload, I'm pretty sure. But Fafnir might not have existed until, at least for the Persona games, until Persona 5 Royal came about, now that I think about it. I'm not sure. But this is definitely a case of just, it's a persona that I remember very well. I remember fighting it a lot in Maruki's palace, and I believe it had no weaknesses. It was difficult to deal with. It was a big, strong, like, one of the rare red aura shadows, and it was really fun when you actually got him, and then you had all of those resistances and nulls on your side instead. But overall, Fafnir is here at 8 just because he just really stands out, and I really like his design, especially like his face kind of being like that metallic, almost skull-looking thing. And he's just such an interesting, like, lanky dragon with long arms and everything. He's just really cool. He's just really cool. And so I put him at number 8. Following Fafnir at 8, we have, I'm gonna butcher this name so bad, we have Sorosha at 7. You know, we'll pretend that I said that right. I have no idea how to pronounce this, but Sorosha is my best shot. Sorosha is one of the most memorable Persona designs to me, because I don't know if I've ever even used Sorosha in a Persona game. To be honest with you, I'm sure I've fused him on multiple occasions. I don't know if I've ever really actually used him, though. Like, actually fused him and then used him, like, as one of my go-to personas to fight with. He's a late-game persona, which late-game personas usually look really awesome, but it's hard to use late-game personas because by then you get so many different late-game personas that you're like, oh, which one should I use and all that. But Sorosha really, really stands out to me. He actually really stands out to me because I remember fighting him as, like, a late-game boss in Soul Hackers 2. But I also remember him from Persona 5. He's one of the Star Arcana. I actually thought he was the ultimate star in 5 until I realized that was Lucifer. But Sorosha has one of the best designs in Persona to me. If we were going solely based off of design, he would probably be in the top 5. But he looks so cool. I love the color of blue he has. I love his mini wings, and the wings have like this almost like vein-like design on them that makes it look aquatic, like it's the surface of water or something like that. It just really, really looks awesome. He's got like the gemstone for like an eye in his forehead. It like looks like it should be his eye, stuff like that. He just really looks awesome. I just love his design. That he's probably the most, like, he made it here just for his there's one other that made it here mostly just for design and nothing else, but he's one of the major, like, I put this one on the list just because he is one of the coolest looking ones to me. And you know what else that really drives it home? He reminds me of Eye Guy from Ben 10. Those of you who have seen Ben 10, who watched it growing up, you're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to unsee this now. I bet. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, you're right. Sorosha is just a blue Eye Guy. Look at him. But he doesn't have all of the eyes that Guy has, but he has like the same aesthetic, if you get what I mean. But Sorosha, just one of the coolest looking personas, much like Hecatoncheir and Fafnir. Was one of the first personas I thought of when thinking of what personas do I think just look really cool. And Sorosha was one of the first ones to come up, so he made it all the way up to 7 on the list, despite me almost never using him. I need to go out of my way to use Sorosha the next time I play Persona 5 or something. That'll be a personal challenge for me, whether I do it on stream sometime or on my own time. But there's number 7, so now we'll move on to number 6. Those of you who have been on my channel for a while probably knew that this one was coming, but at number 6 we have Girimehkala, whose name I probably also butcher, but I just love getting to say Girimehkala. Girimehkala, honestly, straight up, he's stupid and kind of dumb. Like, so much so that I had to say both stupid and dumb, which are just synonyms. But he has become such a meme for me at this point, more or less. Like, look at him. He's disgusting. This freaky one-eyed elephant, just, like, look at him. Just look at how dumb he is. However, all of that being said, he was maybe the first. I don't know if he was exactly the first, but he's the one I remember as being the first persona that I really just used for a while. Once I got Girimehkala in my first playthrough of Persona 5, which would have been around Okumura's Palace. I think it's in Okumura's Palace where you get him. I set him as my main persona and just stuck with him for so long because I believe he reflected gun and physical, and there's just nothing that your opponents can do in the face of that. I think his only weakness was light, and he also had like 2 other resisted. I think he like resisted or was null to fire and dark. I should have fact checked this before. You would think that I would put research into these lists, but I don't. I go purely off of memory, for better or worse. That's not true. Occasionally I look something up if I'm like, am I really right about that? But anyways, all of that aside, Girimehkala was just so funny to me to use so much in Persona 5. And whenever I see him, because he's in like every Persona game, I'm like, oh, look, it's the moon elephant. There he is, chat. We got the moon elephant. And then you see his cousin Ganesha, who's like the star elephant. And you're like, no, not you. You're not important enough. Girimehkala, though, that's what I'm talking about. So because of that, I felt obligated almost that Girimehkala had to be on this list, because when I think of personas that specifically come up in my playthroughs that I like have any kind of connection to, I think of Girimehkala. I'm pretty sure I remember when I was first playing Persona 5 and I got Girimehkala and used him all the dang time, I have a specific memory of a viewer saying, or complaining rather, like, why do you only use this one persona? You should really mix it up, etc., etc. And I was like, why would I mix it up? This dude reflects physical and gun. Like, he's the perfect persona. What more could you need? And then I just kept using Girimehkala even more out of spite. But Girimehkala, kind of dumb looking at the end of the day. He's some weird, like, ancient elephant that stands on 2 legs and clearly needs to go on some kind of a diet. But I just, he's just really stuck with me. He just really stuck with me. So I had to put him on the list, and he ended up in 6th place. After Girimehkala, we have the start of the top 5, which is going to be Samael, whose name I might also be butchering. Samael is, much like Sorosha, a persona that I have barely used in my Persona playthroughs. But look at him! Just look at him! If we were doing this list purely based off of design and nothing else, Samael and Sorosha would both be in the top 5, and Samael honestly might be like in the top 3, to be honest. He's just so sick. Just look at him. Look at this little snake dude. He looks absolutely incredible. He's got like the 5 eyes with like the 1 in the center on like his little snoot. It's incredible. I love it. The mini like bat-esque wings he has going. Not to mention the awesome colors that he has. Just everything about Samael's design just comes together so incredibly well. And I really love how they have he's like a snake dragon. They went like full on the snake, but we're like, what if we give it some dragon attributes, like give it the cool wings, make it really long, make it really big. I just absolutely adore it. He just looks incredible. He looks so amazing. Between the colors, the abundance of wings, just being a giant sneaky snack. It's what's not to love about Samael, man. What's not to love about him? Also, one of my absolute favorite things about Samael is that when you use him to attack, at least in Persona 3 Reload, I don't even remember if he's in Persona 5, but if he is, I assume he does the same thing. I'm I know he's in Persona 4. But in Persona 3, when Samael attacks, he just does a little wiggle. Like, look at him. Hopefully I'm putting it up on screen right now. This dude has Megidola. You're like, hey, Samael, use Megidola. And he's like, all right, dude, I'm on it. He just does he just does a little wiggle, like, oh, let's call down the nuclear warheads. And shoots all of the enemies. Just like, it's so adorable. He's such a vibe. Samael is just such a vibe with his little wiggle to cause nuclear blasts to shoot his opponents. I love him. And so I put him up at number 5, despite having barely used him. Much like Sorosha, this is a case where I need to use Samael more. But just look at how awesome this guy is. I just think he's neat. Speaking of personas that I just think are neat, here at number 4, we have your boy, Genbu. I will be the first to admit that Genbu is probably too high on this list, but he's Genbu. Like, listen, man, I love turtles. I just really, really love Genbu. He's a turtle with a little, like, dragon head, long neck thing for a tail, which is super cool. He's just standing there like, hey, what's up? I'm a turtle. Yeah, I know, but also, look, I have this, like, dragon head that can probably shoot ice at you or something. Beware, be afraid of me. I just love him. He's one of the more, like, almost normal designs, which sounds crazy to say when he is a turtle with a dragon tail. But, I mean, when you look at all the other things that I put on this list, it's like, yeah, he is one of the more normal ones, isn't he? But I have just always really liked Genbu because I like turtles, man. I like turtles. I like dragons. He's a turtle with a dragon for a tail. What else are you going to do? I also remember that Genbu was a very early Persona in Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 4 Golden was my first time playing a Persona game with a shuffle mechanic where you could, like, boost the stats of the Personas. And if I remember right, I was determined to try and make Genbu just an unstoppable force by always keeping him on me and then just giving him stat buffs. I don't think that worked out. It's been years since my Persona 4 Golden playthrough, so I only vaguely remember it. But I remember being like, we're going to make Genbu unstoppable. We're going to make Genbu the most powerful Persona to ever live. No one can stop us, etc., etc. Also, of course, Genbu reminds me of... He's based off of the same myth that the Digimon Sovereigns are. And so whenever I see Genbu, I think of Ebenwumon from Digimon. And although Baihumon is my favorite of the Sovereigns in Digimon, I also really like Ebenwumon. So... just another little wrinkle that makes me like Genbu a lot, because he reminds me of another Digimon that I like a lot from another franchise. Or another creature, I should say, from another franchise, which that franchise is Digimon. But at the end of the day, I like turtles. Genbu is a really fun turtle, and I've used him a handful of times in my playthroughs, so he has a special turtle-shaped place in my heart. Now we get to the top 3, and this is where things get serious. Number 3, I'm gonna say his name wrong, we all know it. It's Seth. Look at it. Just giant black dragon with a weirdly, like, strange whale-shaped head. I don't know why, but when I look at his head, I think, like, whale, even though I don't know why I think it's kind of whale-like, you know? I know what I'm talking about. I know that his name is pronounced Set because he's, like, the Egyptian, he's got the Egyptian mythology and whatnot, but it's spelt Seth. If you just sound it out, it says Seth, not Set. It is so hilarious to me to call him Seth, because you have this giant jet black dragon with bat-like wings that just rains death down upon his enemies, and his name, if you just read it as written, he just sounds like some dude. Hey Seth, like, you free this weekend? You wanna go hang out? We go hit up Sai's palace? And Seth is like, yeah, dude, whatever. And then, you know, the giant death dragon comes around the corner, like, I'm in. Yeah, I'm not doing anything. The missus is out this weekend, so I'm free. I just love calling him Seth. It's so funny. His design is incredible, as I've already said. And on top of all of that, he is a gun murder machine in Persona 5. I'm pretty sure he gets gun amp. I know he gets one-shot kill. And you just get to pop off with one-shot kill with Seth once you get him in Persona 5, which has a high crit chance, and just absolutely destroy enemies. Just blap them all into oblivion. I absolutely love it. I love Seth a lot. He's one of my favorite Personas, as evidenced by being 3rd place on this list, and I always remember him as a result. And, you know, that's about all I have to say, really. He's just giant black dragon, shoots guns, murders. What is so American? What more could you ask for? And so now we make it to 2nd place on the list, which is going to be Metatron. When I decided to do this list, I looked at so many different Personas, And when I was looking at the archangels and all of the angel-like personas, I decided to myself I was going to pick my favorite out of the bunch and put them somewhere on the list, and number one, of course, would be Metatron. I think that he has the best of all of the, like, angel designs, not to discredit, like, Gabriel and Uriel and etc., all of them, because the other angel personas look pretty sick too, but Metatron, to me, is the coolest looking one. He has this whole mechanical vibe going on. Also, his name kind of sounds like Megatron, and he's mechanical. Like, what more could you ask for? The jokes write themselves. But the, like, robotic angel thing that he has going on, the way it makes his wings look and everything, is really sick to me. But he also has, like, a simplicity in his design. He literally just looks like an angel that is a robot. He's got, like, the robe going on and all that, and the one pair of wings that spread out, and he, like, raises his hands up and whatnot when he does attacks like praise and etc. He has a level of simplicity while also just looking really sleek and cool, and as a result, he kind of just hits that angelic vibe perfectly for me while being significantly unique with the whole robot thing he has going on. I just really, really love his design. On top of all of that, of course, he is the ultimate justice, at least in Persona 5. And as we all know, I am a huge Akechi fan, so maxing out Akechi's Confidant and then unlocking Metatron as a result, and I think you then have to, like, Metatron's really high level, so you don't actually get to fuse Metatron until a good bit later, but you max out Akechi's social link near the end of the game anyway, so you get him pretty late in the game, but he is one of the coolest late-game personas. He has that relation to Akechi because you have to max out Akechi's Confidant to get him. And on top of that, I just think he has the coolest design among all of the mini angel-esque personas. With all of those myriad things combined, very easy to get him all the way up to second place. But not quite enough to take first place, which I'm sure 95% of you, if you've watched my content at all, know who I'm about to say for number one. That's right, you guessed it. Number one, of course, is Coffee Dragon himself, aka Kohryu. Kohryu is, without a doubt, my favorite persona that is not like a teammate persona and all that. Even if we took into account, like, teammate personas, Kohryu wouldn't be first place, but I think he'd be in a top 10 list if I didn't exclude party member personas. He would still be on that list somewhere. I absolutely adore Kohryu for a myriad of reasons. Let's start with the most obvious, which is just his design. He's like a Chinese dragon. He's got the long snaky body and whatnot. He has the same lore going on as Fanglongmon from Digimon, where he's like the center of the 4 cardinal directions and the other 4 specific creatures, which for Kohryu is Byaku, Seiryu, Zukoi, I don't know how to say. I always just think of Zukaiamon when I think of the Phoenix, and then Genbu, obviously. The sick golden scales. He's got the really ornate, like, horns, like, big, like, headpiece almost that I really love. He's holding all of the 4 different colored orbs in his 4 hands. he just looks incredible. You just look at him and he is incredible. He also has great skill setup because he gets Meteorahon and Spellmaster, I think, in every game, which makes him incredible for healing so that you can really get finicky with your other team members, especially in 5 where you can switch team members in and out. You don't have to worry about having another healer because Meteorahon plus Spellmaster makes Kohryu one of the best healing personas there is. And also in 5, they decided, you know what? Let's make him even better. We'll just let him have, like, the strongest Psychokinesis moves so you can absolutely abuse status effects and just have Kohryu pop off. Concentrate, Mind Blast, or whatever it's called, or Psycho Force to concentrate Psycho Force, and then Meteorahon when needed. He's usually pretty bulky, so he will live hits, which is fantastic because Atlas still, for some reason, makes it where if the protagonist goes down, you get a game over. So all around, Kohryu is just incredible for gameplay and just for looking awesome. And then on top of all of that, of course, I have a very special connection to Kohryu from my playthroughs because of Sojiro from Persona 5. Sojiro, one of my favorite characters in Persona 5. You have to max out his social link to be able to fuse Kohryu. Kohryu is also, he's a little lower than most of, like, the late game personas. I think he's normally around level 70-ish, so he's still very much a late game persona, but you get him a bit quicker than those other personas that are like, you have to be level 80 to 90 to fuse this one. Like, a Metatron is like around level 90 or something, I think, for instance. So you can get Kohryu right when you get to that in-game zone, but not at the point where it's like, oh yeah, you can get him now, but you've only got like 1 palace to go through. I think you can usually get Kohryu I guess in the original game, it would be the end of the game, because I think probably around Mementos Depths is when you can get him. But in Persona 5 Royal, you can get him for a while. Might even be able to get him in Shido's Palace. Again, this is something I didn't fact check. But he's at a nice level where it's reasonable to get him without thinking like, oh, I have to get to the very end of the game or I have to overlevel. You can get Kohryu and he can be your like end game Persona without being like, oh, you're already like level 95. It doesn't matter what Persona you use kind of deal. So overall, his connection to Sojiro, which it made him just a meme in all of my playthroughs. We call him Coffee Dragon in my chat because of having unlocked him from Sojiro and whatnot. Like, he's got a funny meme name in my channel. Of course, I'm gonna rank him highly. His design is incredible. He's really good gameplay-wise. There's just nothing not to love about Kohryu. He is fantastic. My favorite non-party member Persona, and one of my favorite Personas, period, even if you included party members. Just absolutely chef's kiss. They nailed it with this one. And so there you have it. All 10 of Chaos's favorite Personas that are not party members. Titling this video was such nonsense. I was like, what am I going to call this? Top 10 non-party member Personas, I guess? I still don't like the title, but it's all I could come up with, so here we are. But yeah, there's my top 10. Absolutely, again, loved making this list. I really like doing these top 10s. They take a little bit more work than my usual content, which my usual content is play video game, upload it. So obviously it takes a bit more work. But I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to leave your top 10 Personas down in the comments below. I would love to hear other people's opinions. It was really awesome going back through the top 10 Mega Digimon list and seeing other people rank their favorites and who they liked the most and whatnot. So please, those of you who have any ideas of what your top 10 are, leave a comment. Let me know. I'd love to see it. But that'll be it for this top 10 list. I hope to see you again in the future for more top 10s or playthroughs in general. Also, consider becoming a member for the channel if you want to support the channel and get early access to these top 10 videos. I would really appreciate it. Or just keep watching. Either way means a lot to me. I hope you enjoyed this top 10. I'll see you in the future for more, Persona or otherwise. Until then, farewell.